Chapter 48. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. The incident at the restaurant. The steps in front of Plum Flower Pavilion's main chamber was usually the place where Liangchen and Mei Jing would sit when they were idle. On the afternoon of this day, it was quiet. The two stayed outside as usual. Inside the chamber burned the incense Sweet Dreams. Gu Shiran was taking a nap at this moment, while Xu Huan sat in front of the window and with the help of the sunlight, she polished the 18 rose beads that she carved from a piece of horn agar. It was said to be beads, but only the lower part was sleek like a bead. The upper half had been carefully carved into a rose by her. If it wasn't because the shape and the size of the petals weren't the same, it could have looked like a small water lily when placed on the table. The texture of horn agar was harder than the wonderful redwood of Inga. Don't take that these beads are small, it was very difficult to carve them. She had used 5 days to carve these 18 rose beads. Presumably, it would take another 2 days to polish and decorate them. Then, she still had to make a hole at the bottom for the thread. She worked so hard not because she wanted a bracelet. It was that Gu Shiran threw a small bag at her that contained a piece of agarwood that she didn't know where he got it from. She didn't know the classification, so, she turned to the books to compare it. Gradually, she began to like this special material that had a faint fragrance on it. Even her style and artistic mood got motivated. It happened that she had nothing to do. She used the small agarwood to carve something as practice. While she was at it, she could also make time pass faster. Anyway, she had always liked to do manual work. After polishing one rose bead, she felt that she had sat for a long time. Her neck was also sore. She stood up and walked 2 steps. She also put the waste of the agarwood into the incense burner. Then, she took out a bunch of silk threads. She held them and walked to the outside because she wanted to teach Liangchen and Mei Jing how to make a Chinese decorative knot. When she walked to the door of the main hall, she heard low voices coming from the outside. Did you see wrongly? How could it be our second young master? I didn't say it was our second young master. It was that those who had seen second young master said they look very alike. Looking alike is just looking alike. There are many people in this world who looks alike. As long as it has nothing to do with us, we shouldn't bother ourselves. Big sister is right. Such dialogue without head and without tails made Xu Huan puzzled. She couldn't help herself from asking, who looks like second young master? Liangchen turned around. When she saw that it was her, she quickly stood up and said, second young mistress. Mei Jing laughed. Just now old madam asked me over to ask about how second young master and mistress are doing. When I came out of Pine Crane Hall, I saw big sister Zissou and Fuling holding a portrait and talking about it. I went over to ask. They say that it was an official wanted poster distributed in the city and brought in by the servants. They didn't expect that the person painted in the wanted poster looked about 70% like second young master. Xu Huan's heart jumped 2 times and quickly asked, where is that wanted poster? Mei Jing answered, the 2 big sisters took it inside to let old madam take a look. Because of this, big sister Fuling even rushed out to ask me if second young master had been to the outside these past days. Xu Huan's heartbeat turned faster. There was even sweat in her fists. She forced herself to be calm and asked, how did you answer? Mei Jing didn't feel that there was something wrong. She still smiled. I said that with such a body like second young master's, how could he go to the outside? At most, he would take a walk in the garden these days. Xu Huan let out a sigh of relief. Even though they went out the whole day on Gu Shiran's birthday, fortunately, the prevention was well done. Concubine Yun had sent all the maids to their room. If there was nothing, she didn't call them out. She said that they shouldn't make noise since second young master was feeling unwell and was resting. Hence, even if Hui Yun revealed a mishap, Liangchen and Mei Jing, the 2 relatively innocent and young maids didn't discover anything. Even if they saw him leave, they thought that he had long returned. She calmed down and asked, what happened after? Mei Jing shook her head. After that, I came back. However, she seemed to hesitate slightly speaking of this. She knew that Xu Huan and Gu Shiran didn't like it when the maids gossip. Therefore, she was afraid that if she said more, she would get the dissatisfaction of Xu Huan. Until when she carefully looked at Xu Huan's face and felt that she, didn't have any dislike, she continued, I saw big sister Zissou go to glorious building where master lives. Xu Huan nodded. She had dismissed the thought of teaching them to make the Chinese decorative knot and went back into the room. She guessed that after the incident at the restaurant, that fat man couldn't swallow the humiliation and went to ask his county magistrate brother in law to distribute the wanted poster. She looked at Gu Shiran who was lying in bed and still taking a nap. Just when she wanted to go wake him up to discuss a countermeasure, she didn't expect that she hadn't taken action yet when Liangchen came in and said to her, second young mistress, big sister Yuntan came. She said that old master asked second young master to go over to ask something. So fast. There was not even time for a reaction. Xu Huan frowned slightly, said that she got it and went to wake up Gu Shiran. She couldn't say much in front of the maid. When she helped the still not awake Gu Shiran dress up, she whispered in his ear, the incident at the restaurant had been found out. She saw that the hazed eyes of Gu Shiran immediately brighten up. He didn't ask more and nodded at her. He asked Liangchen to bring tea to rinse his mouth. Then, he grasped Xu Huan's hand. Go with me. Me. Xu Huan was a bit surprised. What was the use of her going? Her lies and acting were definitely not to the point of perfection. In case she panicked and showed something on her face, it would be troublesome. Gu Shiran's body suddenly went soft and leaned on her. He said weakly and without strength in her ear, this master's body is weak. Of course, I had to trouble wife to support me to go over there, Xu Huan was speechless. This person's illness truly come and go when he wanted. However, what was more convincing than being seriously ill and unable to go out? It was just that her heart was flustered and she was afraid that there was not only one wanted poster. Then, not just Gu Shiran, even she and Gu Shihe wouldn't be able to escape. As if he sensed her nervousness, Gu Shiran whispered, don't worry. When we get there, I will handle everything. You have to just act according to the situation. Xu Huan nodded and didn't object. The mess was created by all of them. She couldn't let Gu Shiran bear it alone. If nothing would happen, then she would thank God. If something happens, then she wouldn't feel guilty if the two of them are punished together. While she was in deep thoughts, she supported Gu Shiran to the outside. Fortunately, this guy didn't go overboard with pretending to be ill. Aside from panting, his pace was still stable. He didn't put his whole weight on her. Seeing them come out, Yuntan quickly come to help her support him. She said, second young mistress, you just got well. Don't overexert yourself. Doesn't matter. I'm already much better. I don't know the way. You should walk in front to lead. Don't let master wait too long. While speaking, she supported Gu Shiran alone and went out. When she looked back, she saw that concubine Yun came out after hearing the movements in the yard. There was worry in the eyes she looked at them with. Xu Huan thought a bit before asking Gu Shiran in a low voice, should we bring concubine Yun with us? Gu Shiran glanced at her with a bit of surprise. After hesitating for a moment, he nodded, all right. After all, concubine Yun was a thoughtful person. They also didn't hide the matter of that day from her. With her helping them with the story, it would be more compact and without any holes. Chapter 49. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The discussion. This was the first time that Xu Huan saw Gu household's master. Gu De was already 40 years of age, but he lived a comfortable life and maintained himself properly. Therefore, from the appearance he looked a lot younger than her unfamiliar father. If it wasn't because the ancient people liked to marry from a young age, Shu Huan really wouldn't be able to believe that he had such a big son like Gu Shiran. The shape of his face was square and his facial features were neat. It was completely unlike Gu Shiran's handsomeness and brightness. She guessed that Gu Shiran probably looked more like his mother who had already passed away. Like the rumors in Gu household, Gu Shiran was not favored. The way Guda looked at him was indifferent, like how one would look at a stranger without any blood ties to him. It was even inferior to the strict way old madam looked at Gu Shiran that still carried some concern. However, one thing made Shu Huan feel a bit strange. When she paid her respect, Guda also only swept an indifferent glance over her, the daughter-in-law. However, when he saw concubine Yun, his eyes showed kindness and he even nodded at her. Of course, if it was only this, it still couldn't be considered as strange. Concubine Yun was the type that would easily leave a good impression on someone. That Guda felt that she was pleasing to the eyes and treated her with amiability was also normal. The strangest thing was that concubine Yun didn't dare to raise her head and Lin Shi's expression turned a bit ugly. Could there be something more to this? Shu Huan stabilized her mind to not let herself guess wildly because the facts were never as simple as what the eyes saw. Moreover, this has nothing to do with her. While her thoughts got to this point, she saw Guda through that wanted poster in front of Gu Shiran. He said with a bit of anger, "Look at the good thing you did." Gu Shiran wasn't a bit affected. He indifferently picked up that wanted poster, opened it and looked at it. Next to him, Shu Huan glanced twice over it. She discovered that the portrait really did look like him. However, that fat man probably only remembered how Gu Shiran looked like. There was only one of such wanted posters. She felt greatly relieved. However, concubine Yun frowned slightly when looking at the wanted poster. After having looked at it, Gu Shiran handed back the wanted poster. He didn't justify himself and only asked, "Does master think I did it?" Gu Da's face showed hesitation first. Then, he said, "Is the one painted not you?" Gu Shiran's expression didn't change and said, "It looks a bit similar. Whether it's me or not, I don't know." Guda was obviously blocked by his words. In fact, he was also skeptical whether the person on the wanted poster was his son. After all, the wanted poster said to detain a bandit who caused a disturbance. It didn't mention a name nor a surname. Moreover, after he got the news, he sent someone privately to go investigate. That person said that this bandit threw the county magistrate's brother-in-law naked on the street of the downtown area. The bandit also smashed the restaurant and beat the shopkeeper before he left. This kind of thing didn't look like something his weak and ill son could do. If he had the means to hurt people, would there still be the need to marry a daughter from a poor family in hope that the great event of joy would drive away bad luck and hasten his recovery? Thinking till here, Guda changed his tone, but still stared in Gu Shiran's eyes and said, "When the incident happened, it was the day of your birthday. Did you go out that day?" Gu Shiran still retorted, "When had master seen me go out?" He was made speechless once again. Guda frowned. He suddenly felt that this son's mouth became much sharper than before. Shu Huan wanted to help him justify, but suddenly she remembered that when she opened her mouth the first time she met old madam, she was berated. This father-in-law also didn't seem to like her much. Therefore, she pressed down her impulsiveness and felt that she should remain silent. At least, she wouldn't be more of a hindrance than help. Concubine Yun was observant. She picked up her courage and said, "Master, wasn't the day of second young master's birthday, the day you returned to the residence? When second young master returned from paying his respect, he got the cold and became ill. He stayed in bed for the whole day. It was definitely impossible to say that this matter had anything to do with him." After her voice fell, Guda didn't react yet, when Gu Shiran's body shook once first. It was as if his legs went soft and he didn't have any strength. He put his hand on Shu Huan's shoulder. Then, he put his hand on his mouth and coughed. Seeing this, Lin Shi quickly said, "Your body is not good. Don't stand there anymore. Sit down." Gu Shiran coughed for a while, took 2 breaths and shook his head, "Doesn't matter." Although he said that, but his face turned very pale and a thin layer of sweat formed on his forehead. Then, it was Guda who couldn't look any longer at this. He cleared his throat and said, "Madam, let you sit, then sit." Gu Shiran asked for pardon and then sat down on a chair. Xu Huan was very puzzled. Sweating was not like crying. No matter how good his acting was, how could sweat come and go when he wanted? Moreover, the weather was relatively cool today and this glorious building used ice. The air was cool and would definitely make people feel cool and sweat-free. Although, she was puzzled, she still passed him a handkerchief. Gu Shiran took over the handkerchief to wipe his sweat. Unexpectedly, the more he wiped, the more sweat there was. Even sweat could be pinched out of that thin handkerchief. This was the symptom of a fragile body. Guda sighed slightly and felt that he had probably overthought. Although, his son's illness got a bit better than before, but in the state he was now, not to mention going out of the residence to cause trouble, it would even be a question whether he could walk to the entrance. The thought of asking the doorkeeper also dispatched. Just when he wanted to gesture to let him, go back to rest, he suddenly heard footsteps outside. Gu Shiha rushed in full of sweat. Ranmo was chasing after him. "Fourth young master, slow down. The threshold. Be careful of the threshold." Seeing him, Guda frowned again. He reprimanded, "Doesn't know the rules." Gu Shiha was a bit afraid of him. He shrank a little and went a few steps to Lin Shi's side. Ranmo probed outside of the door. When he saw that the situation wasn't right, he immediately retrieved his head. Lin Shi quickly pulled him into her embrace. While she wiped his sweat, she rebuked Guda, "Don't berate the child the moment you came back. He is still young. How could he know so many rules?" Guda's expression turned a bit ugly. Lin Shi quickly turned the subject, "It wasn't that I spoiled him. On such a hot day, old madam doesn't feel that well. If she heard that he was punished again, what would you do if something happens to her because of heartache?" One sentence destroyed the fire in Guda's heart. He helplessly casted a glance at Gu Shiha and only threw one sentence, "When there is a kind mother, there is a useless son." To Gu Shiha, his father was a tiger made from paper. After putting out old madam, he, wouldn't be able to show his prestige again. So, he reached out to grab the watermelon on the table. While he ate, he said, "So thirsty." While talking, he looked at Gu Shiran, "Why is second big brother here?" He didn't wait for people to answer when he made a "oh" sound. He picked up that wanted poster on the table. While he looked, he laughed, "So alike. Really alike to second big brother." However, how could second big brother go out and cause trouble? "Master, is it that our family is being schemed against and framed?" A seemingly unintentional sentence made Guda's heart skip a beat. When he looked at the wanted poster that was stained with watermelon juice, his eyes became unfathomable. Chapter 50. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Fighting to the end. Don't blame Guda for being suspicious. He returned early this time because some small trouble occurred in the business. Perhaps, aside from the normal business competition, the opponent also used underhanded ways to distract him. Thinking till here, his fingers couldn't help but tap on the armrest of the chair. Seeing his contemplating look, Xu Huan felt that it was funny. Sometimes, it was really not a good thing to think too much. The incident at the restaurant was obviously a simple accident, but when overthinking about it, it would become an intriguing scheme. How tired was it to make your own life so hard? It happened that Guda felt that his suspicion was very reasonable. He showed a cold and angry look. For the first time, he praised Gu Shiha, "You are right. Gu Shiha wasn't very close with this father. He didn't lack love ever since young and also didn't wish for affection. Hence, he didn't feel much at this rare praise. He asked with a mouth full of watermelon, then, what is master's plan? Gouda glanced at him and felt that he was spoiled since young and didn't understand the innumerable schemes of the business. It was also time to make him understand a bit, lest he would be fooled when he had grown up. Hence, he said, we still need to scrutinize who is behind this. The most important task now is to suppress this matter. Gu Shiha asked innocently, how to suppress it? Why don't we carry second big brother to the county magistrate to let him see his fragile look and take down the wanted poster? Xu Huan wanted to laugh when she heard that, but she'd suppressed it. Idiot! Gu scolded. How did you come up with such a bad idea? Gu household face had been thrown away by you. Gu Shiha pulled back his neck and muttered, how would it let Gu household lose face? Someone framed your second big brother and you wanted to carry him over to let people take a look at him. Then, if someone framed your mother or your little sister, do you also want to carry them over to let him take a look? The more Gouda thought about it, the angrier he got. He slammed the table and said, who does Chen Sinian think he is? He is a muddle-headed and silly old man. I don't even know how much money he'd received from us these past few years. Now, he'd turned his back to deal with us instead. As he said that, he called someone to send an invitation to the county magistrate as he was ready to go pay the county magistrate a visit. Looking at his attitude, he seemed to be ready to bring that county magistrate under control. Although Gu household was a family that did business, they also have a backing. Otherwise, it would be impossible to make their business so big. Seeing that the matter was about to turn big, Gu Shiran cast a glance at Gu Shiha when no one was paying attention. Gu Shiha scratched his head and suddenly said, Master, isn't this a bit inappropriate? What is not appropriate? Gu sneered, he's only a county magistrate. Our Gu household can deal with him. Gu Shiha blinked as if he was trying to think about what to say, but that wanted poster only say to capture a bandit. There's no name nor surname on it. If we make a big issue out of this, then wouldn't it be 300 taels not hidden here? Moreover that brother in law of the county magistrate seemed to like men. If this was spread, then wouldn't it damage second big brother's reputation? After Gouda heard this, he was stunned. He suddenly stood up and looked at him with stern eyes, only the word bandit was written on this wanted poster. There was no mention of that hedonistic brother in law of Chen Sinian. How did you get to know that? They were finished. He, GXH, just talked about 300 taels not hidden here. Gu Shiha, this little brat, revealed the 300 hidden taels. Gu Shiha was stumped with the question. Xu Huan panicked, but she was powerless and didn't dare to say more. Otherwise, they would even reveal more than 300 taels. In the end, it was study companion Ranmo who suddenly knelt down outside the threshold and slapped his face. He said bitterly, Master, it was this little one who was talkative, this little one heard the rumors outside. And told fourth young master. Gu Da's expression turned slightly better, but he still reprimanded Gu Shiha angrily, you don't know how to study and only kept yourself busy with the rumors of the market. How did I give birth to a thing like you? While talking, he gestured with his hand and shouted, get out. Why are you still standing here? Gu Shiha was unreconciled in his heart. He looked once at Lin Shi who wanted to say something but hesitated. Then, he lowered his head and walked out. Ranmo saw that Gouda didn't seem to have the intention of punishing him, so he also retreated. He didn't expect that Gouda would suddenly shout his name again. He could only kneel with a perturbed mind in the hall. Gouda looked at him and asked, what else did you hear outside? Ranmo thought for a moment and said, the reputation of that brother in law of the county magistrate isn't good. He used the name of the county magistrate to commit crimes in the city. In fact, he isn't a proper family of the county magistrate. He is just the brother of a pampered concubine of the county magistrate. Jingtian City was a typical outer city where the prefectural magistrate was in charge. The prefectural magistrate and the county magistrate were in the same city. Therefore, when Gu De did business, he would mostly go pay filial piety, a more beautiful way to describe bribe, at the prefectural magistrates. He didn't take such small official as a county magistrate seriously. However, when there were festive days, he would send someone over with gift just for the gesture. He truly didn't know about the things Ranmo talked about. Hence, he nodded and asked, "Is there still more?" "There is." Ranmo hesitated for a moment and looked with the corner of his eyes at Gu Shiran. Only after he saw that Gu Shiran had his eyes lowered and nodded did he continue, "I heard that the county magistrate is afraid of his wife. That pampered concubine was reluctantly taken in for the sake of the next generation. Because of this, the household was all shouts and screams the whole day." There was no need to describe some things clearly. If he explained them too clearly, Master might get suspicious. Hence, he cleverly stopped at the right moment and didn't continue. These 2 sentences were already enough to make Guda smile, but he still warned Ranmo, "Retreat. Go to the accountant's room to receive 2 silver liang as reward. However, remember, don't always let your 4th young master to play in the future. You should persuade him to put more thoughts on studying. Otherwise, I still have a beating waiting here for you." Ranmo promised with lowered head. He respectfully and carefully retired. Guda had things to think about and was impatient to bother with Gu Shiran. He only let Gu Shiran to not think too much and to recuperate peacefully. He then sent them away. When supporting Gu Shiran out of glorious building, Xu Huan took a deep breath and felt that the free and unconstrained freedom was very valuable. She was still not used to this. When she stood in front of those elders from Gu household, she would feel uncomfortable and didn't even dare to breathe out loud. Concubine Yun saw that there was no one around and asked worried, "Second young master, the person on that wanted poster is truly you?" Gu Shiran declined to comment and asked a rhetorical question, "What do you think?" Concubine Yun silently thought about the things and didn't say anything. Xu Huan tiptoed and whispered in his ear, "You have long colluded with little fourth. Otherwise, with that brat's level, how could he lead Guda into the maze of misunderstanding and making him unable to get out with just a few sentences?" Presumably, Ranmo was also on into this. She caught him sneaking a peek for Gu Shiran's reaction. This time, Gu Shiran nodded shamelessly. He laughed quietly and said, "When one cut the weeds, doesn't one also have to eliminate the roots? If one mess with a person, shouldn't one also mess completely with him?" Xu Huan was very speechless. Surely, he was not someone simple and kind. Those words that Ranmo had said was obviously pointing Guda to go rectify, mess with, that fat man. It was just, there was one question that had been in her heart for a long time. She couldn't hold it in anymore and asked, how come you sweated so much just now?" Gu Shiran didn't answer and only took a small porcelain bottle from his sleeve and let her glance once at it. Then, he put the porcelain bottle back. "This is the hot pepper water he used to hurt someone with last time." Xu Huan felt that her forehead was also beginning to sweat. She couldn't help but swear at him in secret. Really too mean. Really too shameless. Concubine Yun followed behind them. Although she didn't know what they were talking about, the way they whispered at each other looked very intimate. She felt sour in her heart looking at it and couldn't help but sigh. Chapter 51. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Borrowing a sword to hurt people at glorious building. Lin Shi looked at Gu Shiran and the others as they left. Suddenly she asked, "Master, why do I feel that Shiran had become a bit different? If this matter happened in the past, he would have long panicked from fear." Guda had many things on his head and heedlessly said, "Is it? Probably it was because he had married that he became steadier. This is nothing bad. However, his body." Having said that, he shook his head and sighed. Lin Shi still continued, "In the past, Shiha didn't like to go look for him and said that second big brother is very boring. Now, he always run to Plum Flower Pavilion. I'm afraid. What are you worried about? Gouda said disapprovingly, is it not a good thing that siblings get along? It's better than that he goes cause trouble outside. Lin sure felt that the matter of the wanted poster was fishy. Perhaps it was really Gu Shiran. However, there was no evidence. Even if there was evidence, he would only be scolded by master and get house arrest. That would show that she, the stepmother, is mean. Hence, she also didn't say more. After considering for a moment, Gouda said, I need you to help me with something. Me. Lin sure was bewildered. I am only a woman. What can I help you with? Didn't that matter of the county magistrate's pampered concubine make the main wife unhappy? Then, he presumably kept the matter of the pampered concubine's little brother causing a rampage from the main wife. Lin sure immediately understood without the need to explain, master means. I have thought about it. We, a family of merchants needs to make riches amiably. I don't want to create a feud with the county magistrate because of such a small matter. Moreover, Shiran never goes out. Even if this wanted poster was distributed around the whole city, no one knows that the person on the wanted poster looks like him. The county magistrate also probably didn't know that he had fell into a trap set by others. We don't have to point that out. It's better to press the things down quietly and take it as if it never had happened. Like that, it also wouldn't damage our household's reputation. While Gouda talked, he paced in the room. You think of a way to invite that wife of the county magistrate to go pray at the temple with you. Make her know about this matter as a gossip. She would definitely get angry at the concubine's brother for acting ostentatiously using her husband's name. We don't have to worry any more about what will happen afterwards. Lin sure thought for a moment and asked, should I prepare a gift? Gouda took a sip of tea. Prepare some regular gifts. Don't go too extravagant. Otherwise, she would see through our intention. Lin sure nodded and complied. This thing was resolved like that. 2 days later, Xu Huan had learned many ways to make decorative Chinese knots. She stringed the carved rose beads. The flower beads were carved beautifully. The color of the horn agar was dark and glossy. Wearing it on her white wrist was particularly beautiful and eye-catching. Not to mention that this bracelet had a natural and seemingly faint aroma. The two maids Liangchen and Mei Jing praised second young mistress for being skilled. Hearing this praise, Xu Huan didn't know whether she should laugh or cry. Making such handicraft at a wealthy household was not something to be proud of. As the second young mistress of a wealthy family, she needed to be skilled at fine embroidery. For example, like concubine Yun who gifted Gu Shiran a personally embroidered pouch on the day of his birthday. The exquisiteness even made her want to go learn how to do embroidery. Hence, she laughed bitterly, no need to praise. The bracelets sold in the jewelry store are much more beautiful than the one I carved. Mei Jing pouted and said, those are made from gold, silver and jade. They are very tacky. Liangchen also said, if one wanted a bracelet made of such wood, one has to go to the temple. However, the best material would only be made from sandalwood and the carvings were mostly about objects that could drive away evil. How could they be as beautiful as this one? Xu Huan smiled slightly, it's praised so much by you. It seemed that I can use it as a gift. Mei Jing quickly asked, who does second young mistress want to give it to? Her eyes were still on the bracelet and she revealed some unwillingness to part with it. Xu Huan carved a bracelet just to pass time. She didn't have those feelings of to cherish it and unwilling to let it go. If she wanted one, she could just carve one in the future. Hence, she put that bracelet in Mei Jing's hand and said, which one of you want to go run an errand? Send this bracelet to eldest young mistress. Usually she always sent some things to eat and I didn't return anything. Mei Jing rushed to say, I will go, I will go. Eldest young mistress was famous for being generous to the servants. As long as someone went to send something to her, that person would receive a big reward. Liang Chen didn't fight with her for this cushy job. She only said, sending it to her like this is not beautiful. Let me go find an exquisite box with a brocade cushion beneath it before you send it. While she said that, she went to overturn trunks and boxes. Shu Huan laughed. It turned out that one also needed a package before sending out a gift. No wonder there was the saying, buy a wooden box and return the pearl inside. While they were busying themselves over here, Gu Shihe charged in smilingly. He was already accustomed to come over to Plum Flower Pavilion. He would come over 2 to 3 times a day. He became more unruly day by day. He didn't even report his arrival anymore. Fortunately, Shu Huan and Gu Shiran were not people who pay attention to the etiquettes. They didn't mind him being like this. Shu Huan played with the agarwood and swept a glance at him. What made you so happy? That fat. He was halfway through his words when he felt that it was not convenient talking with others in the room. He changed the subject and asked, where is second big brother? Isn't he here? Shu Huan said heedlessly, he went out for a walk. These days, not only did Gu Shiran bask in the sun, he also went out for a walk after every meal. Moreover, he didn't let anyone follow him. Liang Qin and Mei Jing saw that they had something to talk about. They obediently said that they had chores to do and left. After they left, Gu Shihe climbed on the chair with radiated delight and whispered in Shu Huan's ear, that fat man is out of luck. He didn't wait for Shu Huan to urge him to continue, tapped Ranmo and continued, quickly, imitate for this master. Ranmo was very embarrassed, but he didn't dare to not listen to Gu Shihe. So, he pinched his throat to imitate the voice of a woman. He even pointed at Dian and said with a squeaky voice, brother.in.law. When did this madam get one more brother? Who the f*** brother.in.law is he? You indulged him to break the law and commit crimes. Those who don't know will truly think that he is my brother. The face of my maiden family had completely been thrown away by you, this old lecher. Pooh, Shu Huan truly couldn't hold in anymore. Ranmo's voice hadn't transformed completely yet. It was still childlike. When he imitated the voice of a woman, it was very similar. That over-exaggerated show of woman's prestige was truly very funny. It happened that Dian still knelt and begged for mercy, wife, spare me. Wife, spare me. Ranmo gave him a slap in the face. Of course, he didn't truly slap him, However, Dian still did as if he got the slap, fell backwards and even cried. Who in the whole city doesn't know that brother in law of yours was beaten because he wanted to take advantage of someone and you still distributed a wanted poster? Do you think the prefectural magistrate is blind or deaf? You will already suffer enough if he just reports you for abusing your position for personal gain. Are you still not hurrying to go withdraw that wanted poster? Dian nodded, wife is right. I will go. I will go now. Stop. Call the bailiffs to go bring your brother.in.law in. Hit him 100 times with the wooden board and then throw him in jail. Dian said with a bitter face, wife, doing this isn't right. What? You dare to not listen to me? While Ranmo imitated, he rolled up his sleeve. This lady will first bring that slutty concubine of yours here and beat her to death. I will see how you will still protect her. When he turned around, he happened to see concubine Yun standing outside the door with a paled face. He immediately sensed that something was not right. He paid his respect obediently and retreated to Gu Shihe's side. Dian also discreetly climbed up from the ground and didn't say anything. Concubine Yun made tea because she heard Gu Shihe's voice. She didn't expect that she was just at the door when she heard the 2 words, slutty concubine. This stabbed her heart, but she couldn't do anything about it. She smiled bitterly, 4th young master, have tea. Then, she put down the tea and retreated. Gu Shihe was used to seeing the concubines of his father. He pulled Shu Huan's sleeve and said dissatisfied, we weren't talk about her, why is she overthinking? Shu Huan also laughed bitterly, let her be. If concubine Yun wanted to overthink and wanted to suffer, what could she do about it? She only hoped that she, didn't overthink too much and think about setting a trap for her again. Chapter 52 You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Away on the summer holidays the moment concubine Yun left, the room became lively again. Because Shu Huan never put on the air of the mistress of a household, Ranmo and Dian weren't too restrictive. They laughed and talked non-stop. After listening to the tragic fate of that fat man, although Shu Huan laughed, she still didn't dare to believe it. Did you fabricate it? Who fabricated it? Who fabricated it? Gu Shihe was dissatisfied. I inquired about it. Ranmo quickly bootlicked, that's right. Fourth young master is very smart. He gave me 2 silver liang to go bribe that servant of the county magistrate. He told me everything. Truly money will make the devil turn millstones. While talking, Mei Jing came in with a basket of grapes. She said smilingly, second young mistress, I have sent that bracelet to eldest young mistress. Eldest young mistress likes it very much and said that she troubled you. Just at that moment, the household management sent newly picked grapes. She let me bring some back. Eldest young mistress also said that the grapes of this year were picked early. They are very sweet. It was just that the first batch wasn't much. She said for you to not dislike them and try some while they are fresh. She just finished when Gu Shihe already took the basket from her like a hungry tiger preying a sheep. He put a grape in his mouth. Mei Jing was stunned, fourth young master, I haven't washed them yet. Gu Shihe gestured with his hand and was about to say that it didn't matter, when Shu Huan reached over and pointed at the grapes. He looked at it. There was a big and chubby worm that sucked the grape juice. He suddenly felt nausea and almost vomited. He wasn't afraid of worms, but this didn't mean that he wouldn't feel anything when he almost ate a worm. Gu Shihe had lost appetite when he looked at the grapes. He walked out, I will go look at old madam's to see if there are some delicious things to eat. He just raised the curtain when Gu Shiran walked in and said to him, thank you. Gu Shihe was dejected. It was obviously a coincidence. Now that he, GXR, thanked him, he, GXH, became a servant who specially raised the curtain for people. He stomped his feet, second big brother is truly mean. Gu Shiran praised, thank you for the compliment. His was too thick-skinned. Gu Shihe had no way. He turned to leave. Gu Shiran sat down, tidied his sleeves and said, little fourth, wait. What? Go to old madam's and inquire whether she would go to the resort to spend the summer. This was her usual practice. Every year, when the housekeeper of the resort come to bring things during the summer days, old madam would tell the housekeeper to clean up the resort and she would pick a good day to move to the resort for a summer break. After all, even if the residence of Gu household was very big and there were many trees and flowers, but it wasn't as cooling as the resort outside the city that faced the mountain. Gu Shihe scratched his head and said a bit annoyed, is there need to ask? A few days ago, she said that her body wasn't feeling as well as previous years. If she goes to the resort, it would be easy for her to catch a cold. I originally wanted to go with her. Now, there is no chance anymore. You want to go? I want. Gu Shiran smiled slightly, then go beg old madam for you to go. Begging is also useless. Eldest big brother is busy. Second big brother is ill. I hate to see that cold face of third big brother. There is no one to go with me. How could old madam be willing to let me go alone? Gu Shihe only talked half-way when enlightenment suddenly dawned on him. Second big brother, you want to go. That is why you let me go beg old madam, right? Gu Shiran slowly nodded and said, clever. You did I. Gu Shihe was very dejected that he was being calculated. Can you not go beg yourself? Gu Shiran put his index finger in front of Gu Shihe and shook it. First, I don't beg people. Second, even if I beg old madam, she may not agree. As for you, no matter if you rolled about and make a scene or disturb her constantly, you can always pester till she agrees. Gu Shihe wanted to refuse, but when he remembered that he doesn't have freedom since master was at the residence and that he could play crazily at the resort because there was no one to restrict him there, so, after he thought for a while, he couldn't resist the temptation and still complied. After he left, Shu Huan didn't say anything, stood up and wanted to go back to the inner room. Gu Shiran asked smilingly, "Why do you want to hide when you see me?" After getting accustomed to his teasing, Shu Huan's ability to adapt was much stronger than before. She opened her mouth and said, "How would I dare? I was going to pack the things master need to bring to the resort lest to not forget something when I wake up." There was no need to think about it. If Gu Shihe go beg, old madam would probably agree. To speak the truth, she was very excited. After all, she wanted to see the outside world after having suffocated for so long in Gu residence. This kind of feeling wasn't strong at first, but ever since she came back that day after the stroll in the streets, she began to long for freedom very much. She became even more not accustomed to spend the whole days inside without going out. Gu Shihe's reply was quite fast. In the evening, he sent Ranmo over to report that old madam had agreed. She let Gu Shiran go nourish his body and also keep watch of Gu Shihe. However, she wasn't at ease. Hence, aside from Gu Shihe's wet nurse Xiaoshi, she also ordered 4 old maids, for maids who know martial arts, for young married women, probably the wives of the servants, and a cook to go with them. Finally, she remembered that concubine Yun was a stable person. So, she let her follow. The old maids were already elders of Gu family. The common saying was that servants who had served for a long time would become masters. They naturally had to bring some young maids to serve them. But those young maids only cared for them. They had to also bring a few maids for the heavy and crude chores, right? Aside from Gu Shihe's 2 study companions, concubine Yun's personal maid Xiangqian also needed to go. In this way, it was a large group of people. Plus, the personal belongings of these people, it didn't look like going for a summer vacation. It looked like they were moving out. Not to mention that Shu Huan was shocked, Gu Shiran was also very surprised. Why are there so many people? Ranmo said happily, "It's only about 30 people. It's not much." If it was old madam who went for a summer vacation, more than half of the people in the household would follow. She originally thought that she could get freedom at the resort. With so many people going, how could she get freedom? However, changing the environment was always better than being bored at Gu residence. Shu Huan could only comfort herself like that. Gu Shiran was obviously not someone who liked to comfort himself. He said frowningly, "Yun Yen doesn't have to go. Stay and keep watch at Plum Flower Pavilion." Concubine was stunned for a moment. She hasn't said anything when Ranmo shook her head. 4th young master already said this to old madam. Old madam said. Said what? Ranmo looked once apological at Shu Huan and said, "She said that the cook only cooks 3 meals. Concubine Yun is good at cooking. If 2 young masters get hungry at night, it would be convenient. Moreover, 2nd young master needs people to boil medication for you. As for 2nd young mistress, that it was already not bad if she could make some salted vegetables. It was better for her to just go play." These words of old madam were really hurtful. Shu Huan thought and thought. She hasn't gone paid her respect these days. So, she felt that she didn't offend this old madam. However, after she thought about the meaning of those words, she suddenly understood. Could it be that old madam thought that it was her idea to go to the resort? When she thought about it, it seemed reasonable. Old madam was also someone clever. After old madam thought about it, how could she not see that someone instigated Gu Shihe to suddenly come pester her to go to the resort? And, when they were packing things, concubine Yun said that second young master had never been to the resort. She didn't know what to bring. It could be seen that Gu Shiran was a well-behaved person who didn't set foot outside. Then, who else could the initiator be other than her, the daughter of a poor family who used to be accustomed to showing her face in public and who couldn't stay well-behaved? Since it was her idea and old madam couldn't bear to let Gu Shiha leave her side. So, she naturally put all the blame on her, sh. Only deriding her with a few words was already very generous of old madam. While Shu Huan thought about it, she couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Of course, she didn't laugh bitterly because she became the scapegoat for Gu Shiran. It was because old madam truly thought too highly of her to think that she could make some salted vegetables. In fact, she also had been spoiled since little. Aside from making instant noodles, she hasn't even touched a spatula before. Chapter 53. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. The resort at Mountain. Going to the resort for a summer vacation was something that would make people excited. Those maids of Plum Flower Pavilion were full of expectations. It was just, Gu Shiran already thought that they brought too many people. Naturally, he couldn't bring everyone. Hence, he used the excuse that people need to keep watch of the yard and only let Shu Huan bring 2 maids. Naturally, this wasn't a hard thing. There had always been fewer maids at Plum Flower Pavilion than other places. The maids who did heavy and crude work could be ignored. Then, those who were qualified to follow were only the 4 maids Huiyun, Xiaoyun, Liangchen and Mei Jing. Huiyun was now a hot potato. Shu Huan didn't feel at ease leaving her at home. Hence, she brought her with them. She would pick someone to marry her off when the opportunity presents. Xiaoyun was someone impulsive. She was like a time bomb, so it was better to let her stay at home. However, if there was not a steady person to keep her under control, she, was afraid that the moment they left, she, Q, would go gossip around Gu household. Hence, when Shu Huan left her at home, she also let the more stable and sensible Yangchen behind. She had no choice but to bring the lively and more childish Mei Jing along with her. Those who could go were naturally very happy, while those who couldn't go were unhappy. Xiaoyun immediately pouted and looked at how Mei Jing excitedly helped pack the things. After looking at her for a while, she got angrier. It happened that Huiyun passed by her, so she pulled Huiyun to a side and complained, "Big sister, look at that frivolous look on Mei Jing's face. Based on qualifications, she is just a newcomer. Aside from being a bit pretty, she hasn't even completely learning the rules yet. What qualifications does she have over me to go out? I say, second young mistress is being too unfair. A few days ago, you only broke a teacup, yet she let Liangchen comb her hair instead of you. She is obviously treating us, those who served second young master for a long time, coldly." These words were said unintentionally, but they happened to hit Huiyun's sore point. Her face immediately reddened and she quickly spoke to disguise feelings, "Isn't it better to stay at home? No one would care even if you sleep till late in the afternoon. What's good about that?" Xiaoyun didn't see the abnormality in her behavior. She said with disdain, "Those snobbish things who look down on people would dare to deny the daily supplies of this yard even when second young master is at home. When second young master is not at home, I am afraid that when I go to the main kitchen to ask for 3 meals a day, I would get supercilious looks." Huiyun was originally not someone of many words. After it came to light that she was a whistle-blower, she was anxious for a few days. When she saw that Gu Shiran didn't hasten to marry her off, she sighed in relief. A kind of hope that she didn't know how to explain appeared in her heart. Hence, these few days, she was even more silent than before and wouldn't speak easily. Upon noticing that Xiaoyun's voice was a bit loud, she was afraid that someone would hear her and cause a scene, so she insisted on leaving and said half-heartedly, "You think too much. It's not like that." Who would have thought that Xiaoyun got motivated by these sentences? She sneered, "I'm thinking too much. You didn't see the things the resort sent over. And, no one thought about sending some to this yard. Even that basket of grapes was brought back because Mei Jing happened to see it and eldest young mistress let her bring them here. Humph, what rare thing. Even if it was sent to me, I would disdain to eat it. Disdain to eat it. Suddenly a voice meddled in. Why do I recall that big sister Qiaoyun likes to eat grapes the most? A few days ago, second young master let someone go buy some. Even second young mistress hasn't tasted a few when all went into your stomach. Qiaoyun was scared off by this voice for a short while. When she turned and saw that it was Liangchen, she felt relieved. However, her face still got red. She fiercely stomped her feet and said, "Don't take it that second young mistress dotes on you and begin to be so impudent to control my affairs." Liangchen laughed, "How would I dare to control big sister? I only heard this and gave you some advice. It's not something big. Big sister should complain less." If second young master had heard those words, big sister's salary will be no more next month. As she said that, she walked away. Qiaoyun was unreconciled. It happened that she didn't dare to chase after her to argue. She had lost interest and resentfully went back to her room. When Liangchen entered the inner room, she also didn't mention about the matter of Qiaoyun complaining. She handed things like mosquito repellent and medications to drive away the heat to Mei Jing. She let her take them to be prepared. It was a silent night. In the morning, Gu Xiran took Shu Huan to old madam's and master's yards to pay their respect. After listening to a bunch of reminders and nagging, they were released by the elders. When they walked to the entrance of Gu residence, those maids and servants who would follow them moved things to each carriage. Looking at their excitement, Shu Huan was reminded of her childhood when she went to a hike and picnic. She couldn't help but reveal a smile. However, she couldn't sleep well last night because of excitement. After she went into the carriage and bumped for a while, she slumbered. In the end, the slumber was scared away by the excited shouts of Gu Shihe. When they just left the residence, this brat still stayed in his carriage obediently. Now, he couldn't withstand the loneliness and climbed into her and Gu Xiran's carriage to chat with them. "I already told Ranmo to go invite Du Qiu and Dr. Ji." While he talked, he stuffed a pastry into his mouth. "It's more fun when there are more people, haha. That I want to learn martial arts to go catch rabbit in the mountain, even if I don't sleep at night, no one would bother me, ha." He was so excited that his speech was incoherent. Only that laughter was loud and cheerful. Shu Huan stared muddle-headedly at his mouth that opened and closed. She suddenly felt that going to the resort may not be a good idea. At Gu residence, there were still other people that could divide Gu Shihe's attentions, but there were no other people at the resort. When she thought that in the days that are to come, she would have to live together with this lively little brat who let people get headache, she became a bit gloomy. Of course, things are always two-sided. Things couldn't be absolutely good and not absolutely bad. After bumping in the carriage for about 8 to 10 hours, Shu Huan almost shouted for help. Soon after, they finally reached the destination. That was a village facing the river and mountains. There was a small lake in the vicinity. Their light of the stars and moon shone on the lake. In the distance, there was the endless mountain. A half-dot-shaped moon towered majestically on the top of the mountain. Seeing the scene in front of her, it was like a picture showing a deep and peaceful beauty in front of Shu Huan. If the prosperity of Jingtian city shocked her, then, the natural night scene of the resort made her feel touched. After living for so many years in the modern world where the pollution was extremely serious, there were very few opportunities for her to be close to the nature. Even the scene in the countryside wasn't so beautifully pure. At this moment, she finally understood why the artistic conception in the ancient poetry often made her wishful. Suddenly, she felt that time-traveling wasn't necessarily a bad thing. At least, it let her experience some refined and natural air. However, this natural state of mind ended with Gu Shihe's loud scream in the quiet night. He ran 2 laps in front of the resort to vent his excitement. He rushed over to grab her and Gu Shiran's hand and urged, walk quickly, walk quickly. Let's go to the hot spring. Hot spring. Was there a hot spring in this resort? Shu Huan got an unexpected surprise. Gu Shiran was obviously not very happy. He looked at Gu Shihe with the corners of his eyes and said, if you want to go to the hot spring, just go. Why do you have to bring us? Chapter 54. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The heavily scented building on the plaque above the door of the resort was the 2 words, Moon's View. The name wasn't elegant, but it matched with the scene. Whether the moon was above the mountains or on the reflection of the water, here was a good place to admire the moon. The scenery inside the resort wasn't clear in the night. Shu Huan only knew that it was very big inside and the corridor was complicated. There was also many green vegetation. The housekeeper here took them inside and introduced everything to them. Every time when old madam came, she stayed in the Japanese rose building. Where do second young master and fourth young master like? Gu Shiran thought for a moment and asked, is there a hot spring here? There is, the housekeeper laughed. It's the hot spring water that dawned from the mountain. Where is closer to the hot spring? The housekeeper replied, Japanese rose building, bamboo pavilion, heavily scented building, double 9th yard. He hasn't finished yet when Shu Huan said curiously, heavily scented building. What a strange name. Because there are orchids in the secluded area, heavily scented building has an unusual scent, Gu Shihe sneered. Big cousin sister likes to show off her talent. It's better if we don't encounter her this time. I will get a headache just from hearing her talking about the 4 arts. Big cousin sister. Shu Huan had no idea about the relatives of Gu family. She didn't know who the big cousin sister was. Gu Shihe said impatiently, it's the daughter of aunt. The granddaughter of old madam. It turned out that old madam's daughter Gu Baozhuan married a distant family of the prefectural magistrate, Zhang family. She gave birth to a son and a daughter. The son is called Zhang Zirong and the big cousin sister that Gu Shihe mentioned was Zhang family's daughter of the legitimate line Zhang Hanfang. In the ancient times, if the daughter who was married off didn't marry far away, they would usually have the custom to return to their maiden family to spend the summer. Of course, that wasn't the case for daughters such as Shu Huan who came from a poor family. Gu Baozhuan often came to Moon's View Resort after she had married. After she got children, she didn't feel at ease leaving her children, so, she also brought them with her. Until 3 years ago, when the old madam of Zhang family had passed away, she had taken over the affairs of the household and didn't have free time to come again. It happened that old madam was someone who liked it to be lively. Since her daughter couldn't come to spend the summer, she often sent people to go pick up her grandson and granddaughter to accompany her. Over time, it had become a norm. Even if old madam occasionally didn't come, they would come over to stay for a while. The housekeeper explained, there are orchids planted in the heavily scented building. Miss Zhang likes it there. So, she picked there to live. Gu Shihe rolled his eyes in disgust, she's sick in the mind. She said that all flowers and grass under the heavens are inelegant. Only orchids are lofty, unsullied and elegant. She let people pull out all the other flowers inside heavily scented building. When the housekeeper heard him say that, he didn't know what to say next. He could only awkwardly rub his hands. Japanese rose building, said Gu Shiran who hasn't said anything for a long time. I will stay in Japanese rose building. Leave bamboo pavilion for Dr. G. Double 9th yard that is there only chrysanthemum planted in it. The housekeeper quickly replied, yes. Leave it for Duchio. Gu Shihe quickly said, then, I want to live in Willow Tree Pavilion. It's closer to second big brother and farther away from heavily scented building. While talking, he also laughed proudly, big cousin sister hates willow trees the most. She would sneeze, haha. The laughter just fell, when Shu Huan suddenly remembered the incident of the dog hair and asked, "You will not sneeze?" It was as if someone had grabbed Gu Shihe's neck. The laughter immediately stopped and he said arrogantly, "I don't care. I want to live there." Shu Huan glanced once at him. Truly a child's temper. The housekeeper didn't know who Dr. Ji and Du Qiu was. He also didn't ask much. He saw that they had picked up their residence, he called people to move the things and clean up. Gu Shihe knew the way and led them to Japanese Rose Building. He couldn't help but ask, "Second big brother, why did you pick to stay here?" Shu Huan knew what Gu Shihe meant. The ancient people put much importance to the concept of ranking. Generally, the juniors would let where the elders live stay vacant to show their respect. They weren't like Gu Shiran who occupied it openly like this. Hence, Shu Huan raised her ears to listen to his answer. Of course, the answer was standard of Gu Shiran. He said, "It was because old madam lived there that I picked it. The things inside must be more complete than other places. Anyway, letting it stay empty was also a waste. What does it matter if I live inside it?" Gu Shihe scratched his head and was speechless. Gu Shiran laughed, "You are afraid that if old madam got to know, she would be unhappy." Gu Shihe was still respectful towards old madam and didn't dare to talk good or bad about her behind her back. Hearing Gu Shiran asking it so directly, he nodded and said, "Yes." Gu Shiran didn't answer and only revealed a smile that deserved to let people ponder over it. Shu Huan felt that she probably understood the meaning behind this smile. Anyway, at Gu household, at the top, there was Gu Shitian to take over the business, at the bottom, there was Gu Shihe who received all the doting. As for him, he was already not favored. Even if he was respectful, he wouldn't be favored. Since he was in the middle, it was better to follow his heart's desire be an idle young master and let himself live comfortably. Of course, she didn't dare to assert whether Gu Shiran really thought like this. She didn't have great ambitions. As long as she could live a leisure life, draw her favorite paintings, do her favorite handworks, see different scenery and feel the happiness of the simplicity, to her that kind of life was perfect enough. Japanese Rose Building was like its name. There was a small wooden fence placed around the yard. The fence was covered with pink Japanese roses. The whole building had a pleasant scent. Behind the building, there was a small road leading to the hot spring. With a short walk, you can enjoy the fun of the hot spring. What stunned Shu Huan was that the hot spring here was in open air. It turned out that the ancient people weren't always conservative. Of course, there was a high wooden wall that blocked the hot spring from the outside. It was also covered with a dense layer of Japanese roses. It covered the small gaps between the wooden boards very well. When one enjoyed the hot spring, she could let the maid stand watch outside. There was no need to worry that someone could peep inside. At your side were the fragrance of the Japanese roses. Above you was the sky of the deep night. If there was a bowl of sour plum soup when you are in the hot spring. While Shu Huan dreamed, she took a deep breath of the fresh and aromatic air. She felt that the ancient people really know how to enjoy. The one who knew how to enjoy more was Gu Shiran. Taking advantage that her mind was elsewhere, he reached out and grabbed her waist. He put his chin on her shoulder and whispered softly, "Wife, we can take a mandarin duck bath together." She turned and saw the eyes of Gu Shiran shone like water under the light of stars and moon. After being teased often, thin-skinned people could also become brazen. Moreover, Shu Huan wasn't a lady who lived in the ancient times. She was only shy for a moment before she glared at him as if nothing had happened and smiled, "Good, I will go find 2 mandarin ducks to accompany you in the bath." For the first time, Gu Shiran was speechless. When he looked, he saw that Mei Jing, who followed them not far away, was laughing secretly. He immediately cleared his throat and said, "Did you hear? Second young mistress wants mandarin ducks. Quickly go find 2. Ah, Mei Jing was still clever. After being stunned for a moment, she understood that second young master found her an obstruction. She readily followed his advice, turned, ran and also said, "This slave will go find now." L.rg Shu Huan almost burst into tears. Gu Shiran, this bad boy turned the always obedient and well-behaved Mei Jing into a black belly. Chapter 55. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The scream of the small lotus. Never be lenient when dealing with a black belly. In the end, when Shu Huan soaked in the hot spring, she still drove Gu Shiran away. Of course, she felt a bit of guilt in her heart. After all, she was indeed his wife. However, after being together for these days, although they didn't say it, they had cultivated a tacit understanding. He presumably knew that her heart hasn't really settled down and still lacked sense of security. She knew his pride. He wouldn't be willing to force her. Hence, the two were obviously husband and wife and slept in the same bed, but aside from the limited physical contact, they couldn't be more chaste. Females who time-traveled had the aura of a protagonist and was very beautiful and charming. Those are lies. In this strange era, she was only an insignificant passerby. The only thing she could do at the moment was continue to stay in Gu household and wait for time to tell her the right choice. To leave or to stay. Shu Huan soaked in the hot spring and sighed very melancholically. If she chose to leave, it would be a very despicable act, right? It was taking advantage of Gu Shiran in disguise to get the relatively stable days at Gu household. Of course, she had told herself she had to be a bit more selfish and fight to survive here. However, the strong sense of guilt suddenly poured in her heart. Her upbringing told her, what you don't want done to you, don't do to others. If there was a person who stayed at her side just to use her as a talisman and leave when he got the ability, she would also be sad. However, if she chooses to stay, then Gu household, concubine Yun and the dark schemes. She got a headache just thinking about it. It was really difficult to find the balance between reality and idealism. The mental knot couldn't be vented out. Therefore, Shu Huan suddenly had the urge to scream. She quickly buried her face in the palms of her hands and clenched her mouth tightly, lest she couldn't control herself and really screamed. At this moment, she truly wished that she was originally someone of this era. Then, she would be able to accept many things that she couldn't accept now and wouldn't have so many troubles. A slight smirk recalled back her senses. She put down the hands that were on her face. She turned and saw that Gu Shiran had his back against the frame of Japanese roses. He looked thoughtfully at her and asked, "What are you doing?" "Ah," Shu Huan finally screamed. She didn't forget to cover her chest area. Gu Shiran's ears were suddenly stabbed by this sharp voice. He slightly raised an eyebrow and said, "Why are you screaming like a ghost? You peeped. Too shameless." Gu Shiran objected, "More than half of your body is inside the water. What can I look at?" That was a fact, but the water of the hot spring was clear. The lantern was resting on the edge of the hot spring. Under the brightness, something may actually still be visible. Shu Huan panicked, reached her head over and blew out the lantern. The surroundings suddenly darkened, leaving only a few bright moonlight rays. Gu Shiran laughed again, "Why are you so nervous? Who let you soak for an hour and still didn't come out? I thought that your physique wasn't suitable for hot springs, got worried and came over to take a look." "Excuses," Shu Huan said angrily from embarrassment. "If you are truly worried, you can let Mei Jing come over to take a look." "Second young master, is there a need for you to come personally?" She couldn't see Gu Shiran's expression in the darkness. She could only hear his mocking laughter, "Don't worry. There are no dragonflies this time." "What dragonflies?" The topic changed too fast. Shu Huan was confused. In the next moment, his voice was close to her. His tone also turned more amorous, "When the small lotus screams, isn't it only the dragonfly that is interested?" He obviously saw it and still say that he didn't see it. Xu Huan didn't know whether she was shy, annoyed or embarrassed. Thousands of words became one word, F******. Her forehead felt a pain. She had been immediately flicked by him. She didn't know how this bastard found the right spot in the darkness. Xu Huan took a deep breath. Just when she wanted to turn into a shrewish wife, she felt something warm on her lips like a bit of water that rubbed past her. Then, she heard him whisper, "No swearing allowed." The words just fell, when his lips pasted against hers again. Xu Huan backed intuitively and wanted to dodge. Who would have thought that on the bottom of the hot spring were smooth pebbles the size of a hand palm? When she stepped on the pebbles, a piece of pebbles loosened and made her slip. Her body lost balance and fell backwards. "Be careful." Gu Shiran quickly reached out to grab her, but his kneeling posture wasn't stable. Not only did he not hold on to her, instead he was brought down by the weight of her body. One after another, the two fell into the water. A splash of water flew to everywhere. The hot spring wasn't deep. Xu Huan struggled for a moment before she stabilized her body and stood up. However, a pungent feeling spread upwards from her nose. This extremely uncomfortable feeling of drowning made her seem to have returned to the moments before she had time-traveled. The painful memories were interrupted by Gu Shiran's embrace. He wrapped her tightly like an 8-clawed octopus. He used so much strength that she could barely breathe. Xu Huan immediately remembered that she was naked. Two words came out of her gritted teeth, "Let go." "I don't want to." Gu Shiran simply refused, but the tone was different from his usual indifferent tone. It had some fright in it. He hugged her more tightly. "This is murder." Xu Huan didn't have time to care about being shy and barely said, "You are nearly suffocating me to death." Gu Shiran hesitated and relaxed his hands a little. He urged, "Quickly come to the edge of the hot spring." This time, his voice shook a bit. Xu Huan didn't notice it. She quickly took 2 breaths. She wanted to push him away, run to the clothes that were at the edge of the hot spring and escape. It was just, she pushed him 2 times, but he didn't move a bit. At this time, her eyes had already adapted to the darkness. With the help of the light from the moon and stars, she finally saw his panic-stricken look. She couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. "You are afraid of water." Perhaps it was Gu Shiran's usual calm composure that left a deep impression on her. She also felt that her guessing was ridiculous after the question just left her mouth. However, the other party suspiciously closed his lips in a tight line. He looked at her with an ugly expression without a word. It was very different from the usual black belly image that liked to tease her. Gu Shiran was really afraid of water. The truth made Xu Huan in disbelief, but she still very obediently took him to the edge of the hot spring while blushing. There was no other way. She couldn't let him continue soak in the water while she was naked, right? Gu Shiran's left hand touched the flat edge of the hot spring. He immediately showed a relieved expression. It was as if he had survived a calamity. However, his right hand was still shamelessly on her waist. Xu Huan hurriedly urged, "Can you let me go now?" Just now, he said, "I don't want to." Now he said, "No." While he refused, his pair of eyes glanced downwards with no good intention, making Xu Huan overwhelmed with anger. Why is this bastard not more afraid of water? It would have been better if he was so afraid that he fainted. Chapter 56. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The misunderstanding. While the two were deadlocked, a dragonfly flew out of the grass and flew 2 times around the rack of Japanese roses. Then, it flew to them. At the same time, there was a sound of footsteps. Gu Shiha shouted loudly, "Who was screaming? What had happened?" Gu Shiran's face instantly turned black. He shouted, "Stop. You're not allowed to come over." However, he shouted a bit late. Gu Shiha's figure was already looming on the edge of the fence of Japanese roses. There was a lantern in his hand and was rushing over to this side. Second big brother, is it you? Looking from where there was light to where it was dark, one couldn't see anything. However, Gu Shiran still panicked. He let go of Shu Huan, went to the shore to find her clothes that were not far away and brought them over. He didn't care whether they would become wet and put them directly on her body. He wrapped her whole body and put her behind his back. Gu Shiha didn't hear his answer and thought that something really had happened. He took 2 steps to this side. After Shu Huan had been tightly wrapped, did Gu Shiran sigh from relief. He said with a black expression, "Why did you come?" Gu Shiha was baffled. He didn't know why Gu Shiran was so angry. "I was catching dragonflies behind the Japanese rose fence when I heard someone scream. So, I came over to see what had happened." Halfway through the words, he discovered that Gu Shiran's figure looked very bloated in the darkness. It looked like Guda was surrounded by many concubines. Although, Gu Shiha's thoughts were pure and innocent, but there was a limit. He suddenly slammed his head with his hand and came to a realization. It turned out that there was not only his second big brother here. Before Gu Shiran shouted to drive him away, he tactfully ran away. While he ran, he said, "Continue, continue. Do as if I've never been here." Although, he said that, but he couldn't help but guess who the woman with second big brother was. Anyway, it wouldn't be second sister in law or concubine Yun. They didn't have the need to scream. Could it be that second big brother took a fancy on some maid and took action while taking advantage of the night? Thinking till here, Gu Shiha suddenly became depressed. Now, he still quite likes Shu Huan, this second sister in law who didn't pay particular attention that skirts didn't have to move when walking and that she shouldn't reveal teeth when laughing and who liked to play with him. He didn't want to see her become like his mother Lin Shi, who was unhappy every day and whose whole heart was only thinking about how his father was with that and that concubine and how she should teach the newly favored concubine a lesson. Or, when a certain concubine changed her taste, she would be thinking whether that concubine was pregnant or something like that. Let's not mention the small trouble of Gu Shiha. Let's talk about when Gu Shiran and Shu Huan climbed to shore in a sorry state and lit the lanterns. They discovered that the whole body of the other party was wet. The summer clothes were thin and light-colored. Now that they were pasted tightly to the body, nothing was blocked. Gu Shiran gazed at her in secret. He found out that her figure was graceful and curvy. It seemed that it wasn't so much like a bean sprout as he had imagined. He was beginning to hesitate whether he should find a chance to eat her now or that he should raise her for a few more years. Shu Huan immediately noticed the change on his body. After being blank for a moment, and then realized what was going on, her face immediately reddened. She swore, "Pervert Gu." After she swore, she turned and ran. She didn't even care about taking a lantern and went all the way to Japanese Rose Building in the dark. Fortunately, she didn't bump into anyone. It was just that it was very uncomfortable with the wet clothes pasted on her body. When the wind blew, she sneezed twice. When concubine Yun made ginger soup for her, that manner and hesitated expression made her, a bit dejected. Of course, she didn't have an easy time this night. When Gu Shiran had returned, she was already pretending to sleep on the bed. However, she couldn't control her mind from recalling what had happened. The more she thought, the more she couldn't sleep. In the end, she discovered that Gu Shiran, who was lying next to her, also didn't sleep. He turned several times and finally got out of bed quietly. She heard the squeak of the door and the small bang when it closed. Shu Huan didn't move and lay in the dark for a long time. Even after an hour, he didn't return. In the middle of the night, the only place he could go was presumably concubine Yun's, right. She turned and lay flat on her back. She stared at the roof for a while. She suddenly laughed bitterly. Why did she felt a sense of loss at something that was to be expected? Since she couldn't make a decision, it wasn't a bad thing that someone else could make a decision for her. The facts proved once again that some things weren't the same as what you thought. Early in the morning, when Shu Huan went out of the room with dark circles, coincidentally she saw Gu Shiran came out of the study. This person said to her refreshingly, "Good morning." Shu Huan really wanted to die. For what did she toss about in bed for the whole night? What puzzled her more was, why was Gu Shiran so good to her? Wasn't having 3 wives and 4 concubines seen as normal in the eyes of ancient men? That he was cold to concubine Yun didn't mean that he couldn't sleep with concubine Yun, especially when she hadn't fulfilled the duty of the wife. There was a small guilt mixed with some unclear emotions in her heart. She sighed privately and revealed a forced smile. "Good morning." Gu Shiran looked at her up and down. He suddenly laughed. "Last night, no one fought for the bed with you. You must have slept well, right?" Was he asking intentionally? He must be asking intentionally. Shu Huan looked in the mirror. Her face was pale like a ghost and the dark circles were very obvious. She didn't believe that he didn't see. However, for her pitiful self-esteem that was about to be ruined and disappear, she forced herself to say, very good." Gu Shiran laughed more freely and recklessly. Shu Huan suddenly felt her anger drain. She could no longer pretend that nothing was the matter. She also didn't dare to look at his eyes that were clearer and brighter than usual. She lifted her skirt, turned and ran. She ran faster than last night when she was in a sorry state. Of course, there was also things that happened outside of Gu Shiran's expectations. He didn't know that his young 4th little brother was so sensitive to the passion under the moon. Hence, when he returned from a walk around Japanese Rose Building, he inadvertently heard the conversation between him and Shu Huan under the Japanese Rose fence. His handsome face immediately darkened again. Gu Shiha was very gossipy. "Second sister. Law, why are the circles around your eyes so dark? Didn't you sleep well last night?" Shu Huan tried to cover up with mumblings. I slept well. So well that it couldn't be better." "You are lying." "I didn't." "Don't cover up. I know everything." Shu Huan's voice went 8 decibels higher. She said full of doubt, "You know everything. How is that possible?" "That's right." Gu Shiha tiptoed and patted her shoulder full of sympathy. "All men are like that. Look at my father and my eldest big brother. In short, it's better to accept the situation and move on. In fact, this matter is no big deal. What does this have to do with your father and eldest big brother?" Shu Huan became more suspicious. "What do you know?" Gu Shiran lowered his voice mysteriously. "Isn't it what happened at the hot spring last night? I saw second big brother embracing a second sister. Law, don't you know all about it? Why is your face red like this? Hey, don't run." He was just about to chase her, when he suddenly felt that the sunlight above his head was covered by a dark cloud. Then, a cold and gloomy voice sounded, "Brat, are you tired of living?" Chapter 57. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Blackmail this voice. This voice. Gu Shiha didn't have time to turn around yet, when he felt a pain on his butt. He had been fiercely kicked. He smacked his lips in the grass and fell on the ground. He yelled with a crying voice while his hands covered his butt, "Second big brother, I was wrong." Gu Shiran looked condescendingly down on him. He had a smile that was not yet a smile on his face. There's no sincerity in just an apology. Then, the last time you asked me for that box of agarwood, what about I find another one for you? Not enough. Plus a top quality ink stone. I'm still ill and don't have to study. I don't have to take the imperial exam. I can't even hold a brush. What am I going to do with an ink stone? He couldn't hold a brush, but it was very painful when he kicked people's butt. Gu Shiha cursed silently. But, it was indeed a bit inappropriate to discuss Gu Shiran's passion under the moon with Xu Huan secretly. He had a guilty conscience. Since he had a guilty conscience, he had to please the other party. Hence, he still smiled. Last night, I caught one cricket. It is very powerful. It won every battle. What about I give it to you? Gu Shiran bit his lips. Do you think I am the same age as you? Gu Shiha said bitterly. Then, what do you want? Let me think. Gu Shiran truly thick-skinnedly began to think. Because Guda was at home, Gu Shiha didn't find an opportunity to tell old madam about the matter of taking Du Qiu as a martial master. Therefore, he, GXR, had been paying the monthly salary from his own pocket. Thinking till here, he smiled slightly. Why don't we do this? I promise to pay Du Qiu 5 silver liang every month. In the future, you pay that. 5 silver liang. Gu Shiha didn't feel heartache for the agarwood, because it was gifted that. He also didn't feel heartache for the cricket, since it was caught. Originally, he shouldn't have felt heartache for money, but paying every month without a deadline, he felt a bit heartache. With 5 silver liang, he could buy a lot of fun things. Gu Shiran swept once over him. Can't bear it. Nonsense. When we go back, you can ask old madam for the money. Just say you found a martial master near the resort. Gu Shiha's eyes widened. Second big brother, you even take advantage of old madam. You are truly. Gu Shiran looked at him smilingly. Truly what? Truly astute and circumspect. Fool, Gu Shiran knocked his head. You don't listen when they say you should study more. You don't even know how to bootlick. Speaking of the martial master, the housekeeper came over to report that Dr. G and Master Du was already outside. They also came with an old lady. He came to ask whether he should arrange their accommodation according to last night's instruction. Gu Shiran nodded and also reminded the housekeeper to send 2 maids over to serve them. Then, he went with Gu Shiha to welcome them. While they were half-way, they saw Ranmo led the people in. Ji Danqing still wore an azure-colored bamboo robe. It looked bright and warm on him. Du Qiu had black clothes. It made his ordinary appearance appear clear and refreshing. Only when his eyes turned to the old lady who was holding his hand would his eyes reveal a gentleness that was not in line with his character. Seeing that they came to greet them, Ji Danqing cupped his hands and revealed a gentle smile. This little one originally was embarrassed to come here to nag, but this old lady's illness has not been healed yet. Brother Du wasn't at ease and wanted this little one to accompany them. This little one could only be thick-skinned and come for a few days of leisure. Second young master, no offense. Gu Shiran laughed. Dr. G is too polite. My weak body will need your help. If you didn't come, even if I had to let people kidnap you, I would have brought you here. Over there, Mother Du was inquiring in a low voice about Gu Shiran's identity. After hearing that he was Du Qiu's boss, she hurriedly went over to pay her courtesy and to thank him. Her gratitude was all over her face. She said, if it wasn't because young master asked this Dr. G to look at this old one's illness, this old one is afraid that I would have no chance to get better again. They talked for a while when the housekeeper came with 2 maids. Gu Shiran saw that Mother Du revealed a tired look. Presumably, it was tiring on the way. He didn't say more and let the maids bring them to their accommodations. The time flew fast. In a blink of the eyes, half-month had passed. Because there was no one to restrain her, when Xu Huan was idle, she would walk around the resort. She got to know the resort very well. However, after seeing the resort for so many times, she still got tired of it. She saw Gu Shiran busily learn martial arts from Du Qiu every day and he seemed to be in high spirits. He would also get out of bed every day before it had become light. She suddenly felt that learning martial arts for self-defense was not a bad idea. Even if she couldn't beat people, but if she learned Qigong well, at least she could escape at a critical moment. Hence, she got the idea to learn together. Fortunately, she didn't immediately tell Gu Shiran that she wanted to learn, but left room for consideration. She observed secretly for 2 days. In the end, she discovered that Du Qiu was indeed skillful. With one leg, he could break a thick pile of woods. With one hand, he could break a small piece of rock. It was very different from the perfection she had read in wuxia novels. Even when leaping onto roofs and vault over walls, he had to use tools. He couldn't go a foot high with just a jump. He also couldn't reach out a finger and point someone's acupuncture point, making that person unable to move. The content in wuxia novels are mostly fabricated. The kung fu inside those novels were divine. Xu Huan knew that Du Qiu was already very powerful. He could split wooden stakes and rocks. If that was applied on humans, the result could be imagined. However, after seeing Gu Shiran practice those basic skills till he was on the verge of collapsing and Gu Shiha's expression would turn dark when practicing martial arts was mentioned, she cowered without any perseverance. After all, when she went to the physical class in the past, only 800 meters was already enough to make her vomit. If you let her wake up early every morning, run 3 laps around the lake outside of the yard, chop wood, do martial art squat, climb the mountain and carry buckets of water on her shoulders, she would feel that life was dark. Since she couldn't practice martial arts, there was no other ways to spend this long summer. She could only go back to her old hobby and began to sculpt things from agarwood. Whether it was bracelets, waist pendants, hairpins or toys, she would carve them when she got the inspiration. 1. She could pass time. Secondly, after living for such a long time in Gu household, she knew that in order to form friendship, gifts had to go back and forth. She didn't have many valuable jewelries and she only had 10 liang every month that she needed to save. Moreover, her family wasn't rich like eldest young mistress who also got countless of dowry. She could only rely on her own efforts and carve some exquisite things like the long hibiscus hairpin and waist pendants of words as preparation for gifts. However, only this wasn't enough. Agarwood was an expensive material. Carving something from it to gift elders was not shabby, but using it to reward servants, even if she rewarded a whole room of agarwood, it wouldn't be enough. Of course, she could also not reward them. No one would dare to say something in her face, but there would be a lot of scorning behind her back. They would gossip from her background to her appearance and then from her appearance, they would gossip to her character. In short, it wouldn't be some good gossips. She didn't hear anything, but Mei Jing heard many. Because of this, Mei Jing also angered a lot. 2 times, she even quarreled with people. In the end, she came back in tears. Xu Huan had a casual temper and was used to the life of self-satisfaction. If it was in the past, she wouldn't care about what others say. She would continue to live and do as she liked. To let her go please those who talked filth about her would be a dream. However, after she traveled and experienced the complexity of a household, she now knew very well about the principle of standing in front of the king of hell is easy, but smaller devils are difficult to deal with. Not to mention that public opinion was powerful enough to melt metal, destroying her to the bones and make her burn between fire and water. Therefore, even if she didn't go please those people deliberately, she also needed to learn the way of eldest young mistress and concubine Yun, to reward some money when it was appropriate. Use the limited economic losses to exchange for the unlimited peace and tranquility. There was only one problem. Where should she get the money back for these essential expenses?